Hello friends, how are you? And welcome to my channel. Today we are not going to discuss about any fancy stuff or anything related to house tools. Today we are going to talk about a very specific term called equity. We need to understand what is equity. We need to understand what is good debt and bad debt and how this good debt or equity can help you secure your future and make you more independent than becoming dependent on your future generations. So let's talk about the word equity. In order to proceed further, we will go through a few agenda that we have set for this video. Topics that we will cover in this video will be what is equity and what is good debt and bad debt that we just talked about. How the equity actually works, the advantages and disadvantages of using equity, how the equity increase for you. Let's take an example of equity, how we can get the equity, what can I buy with the equity. Let's do some calculation as well to see how the good debt, that is equity, will help us to build our empire. And what is good and bad debt. One of the takeaways that you will have from this video today is that to make you understand what is money and how the money actually works for you. In today's world where everyone is so connected to each other and even a small event that might occur 1000 kilometers away from us can indirectly or directly affect you. One such instance is what happening currently out in Ukraine. When the war broke out in Ukraine, we all thought it's not going to impact us because it's too far away from us. But no, it all had impacted us as well, where the trades had gone up, the commodity prices had gone up, the materials had gone up, even the energy prices had gone up by 12 to 13%, or I would say more than that as well. And it's still going up, right? So yes, even if something is happening long away from us doesn't mean that it will not impact us. And we should not be finding excuses on why it is happening and because of that it is just impacting me. We should find ways, we should find opportunities to grow in spite of any issues that comes to us. We should not find any excuses to hold you back, not move you forward. So always remember, guys and friends, that please find opportunities in everything that you can do to build a wealth, to become knowledgeable, to become something you always wish to have, rather than holding back yourself and saying, alright, I never had that kind of backing from anyone for the reason I never can grow. That is not true. You can find always some opportunities in anything if you have the zeal, if you have the eagerness to do that. So let's understand this part in the terms of money, in the terms of finance, in the terms of equity and what is good and bad debt. Before we understand equity, let's understand what is good and bad debt. The good and bad debts are something which the bank loans you. When the bank loans you, that is called debt. So you have a debt onto the bank that you have to pay back. But many people, they use that debt and fall into a trap called bad debt. An example of it, say for example myself, I go to a showroom, I like the car and I purchase that car. I paid the EMI, I got a loan out of it. Now when I started buying that car and I started driving around the world or driving around Australia, then actually it is a bad debt because I am paying the bank, I am paying the manufacturer, I am paying the builder of that car, but not taking advantage of that car to pay back something to me. So I am putting all my money into the car just to fulfill my personal desires. In today's world, taking a loan is not that very hard. It's very easy. If you have a certain amount of salary in your pocket, then definitely bank are happy to pay you some amount which you can use it for your debt. Now, that is called bad debt. But what can I do to make it into a good debt is that if I buy that car and then I use that car for my rental. So say for example, I put it into rental, someone else comes and they drive it for me and they pay me back the money. They pay that amount into my pocket, and that is where the good debt and bad debt comes into picture. So the bad debt is something when the money goes out of your pocket and never returns back. Good debt is that when the money goes out of your pocket but that returns back with good returns is called good debt. And this is what good debt versus bad debt is. Equity is a kind of a debt, and when you take equity, it can be used for good debt, it can be used for bad debt. So that is where we need to understand. So let's understand what is the term equity is. Equity is the capital growth you will have on your property that will be on top of the debt you have on that same property. So a property that you have and the property value increases with each year, as we all know, but the debt that you have, while it goes below a certain limit and then you have a cap on top of it, that is called equity. We will understand it more better in the next slides. So let's go ahead and talk about what equity is exactly. Equity can be used for accessing that extra cash of your account property that we can use for buying multiple properties, or can be used for multiple purposes as well. Equity in plain word means fairness and justice, and that everyone should have the equal opportunity to succeed and grow. Equity is not about making everyone rich, it is about giving everyone a fair chance to succeed and become wealthy. When we achieve equity, we create a society where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential. Now friends, in my earlier videos, I had mentioned about a term called rich and a term called wealthy, and what are the difference between it. And we need to be very careful about understanding those two terms. Rich is not equal to wealthy, and wealthy is not at all equal to rich. They are completely different to each other, and there is a thin line of difference between it. And it's very important we understand that thin line of difference. In finance world, equity refers to the value of a property or business after the debts have been subtracted. For example, if you own a house worth $500,000 and you owe to bank on $200,000 as a mortgage, then you have an equity of $300,000. The next part that we will be talking about is how the equity actually works. Mechanics of equity, how the equity actually works. It is very simple to understand but very complex to make it work, and let's try to make it simpler for you by going through step by step. First, you have a house which is currently valued for $500,000. So this is the full value of the house, which is $500,000. Bank debt you currently owe on that house is $250,000, which is 50% of the value. So 50% of it is something that you owe to bank. So bank is having this much of amount on that property. Bank sees that your house currently hold an amount of excess $250,000 on top of the debt you owe. So he says, the bank comes back and did an evaluation and said that your property is currently valued for $500,000. You have a home loan of 50% of it, that is $250,000, and you currently hold a $250,000 of excess amount that is currently in here. Now you have an equity of $250,000 on that house, which means you have a capital of 250,000 Australian dollars. Bank always keeps a buffer of 20%. Bank will never give you the full equity amount. He will always give you 80% of it and will keep the rest of the 20% with himself. So in this case, as below, if you see, you cannot use all the amount and you can only use the rest of the amount after it deducts that 20%. So from the 100%, it deducted the 20%, it kept that 20% as your buffer amount, which cannot be used by you or neither by the bank. 50% is already under the debt, which is with the bank, and the rest 30% are the cash that you can decide whether to take it or not and how to use it, whether you are going to use it for a good debt or a bad debt. Like any debts, equity also have its own advantages and disadvantages. So let's go through the disadvantages first, and then let's go to understand the advantages of it. In the disadvantages, it increases your mortgage repayments, because please friends understand that equity is nothing, it's a loan, it's a debt. So the moment you take a home loan or the moment you take the equity out of your house, it goes as a debt and that will increase your mortgage repayments. Now we will understand, if it is a debt and if it is going to increase my mortgage repayments, then why the hell am I going to take that equity out of my house? It is just going to increase my debt. So we will talk about it why in the future slides. Taking on increased risk. Again, in the future slides, you will understand it more because this is where the risk comes into factor. The reason behind I did mention about it is because if you convert that equity into a bad debt, then the risk increases immediately. But if you convert that into a good debt, then the risk decreases like anything. Excessive interest if not repaid quickly. Absolutely, because it's a home loan, it's like a loan for you, and the bank is giving you the loan on a term that you are going to repay it on time. So if you don't do that, then there is an excess amount of interest rate that will go on sit on top of it. So you have to be very careful about it. The debt on the house increases, which I already had mentioned. The moment the increase of the mortgage repayments happen, the debt also directly increases. The debt increases for the reason your mortgage EMI also increases. It reduces your borrowing capacity. More you take the loans, your borrowing capacity decreases. Decreases your credit score. The moment you take a loan, that will go and will sit in your credit check, and the moment it goes to a credit check, your credit score also decreases. So that are the disadvantages of having an equity, or not having an equity, of taking an equity. If you're having an equity and you're taking that equity out of that property, then these are the disadvantages. Now let's understand the advantages of it. The advantages of having the equity is that you can access that quick money. You can immediately access that money to build your empire or build something that you always love to have. Renovations can boost your property's value as well. You can use that equity to renovate your house, and that will help to increase the value of the house in the future as well. Buy another investment property without any wait time. So whenever we have to buy a property, as you guys all know, that we need at least 20% of the deposit, and that is the only pain point that we have when we go for the first property. Whenever we go and buy a first property, we always used to wait for 5 to 7 years, depending on each other's situation, or say financial situation, like where we are and how much we can save for that 20% so that we can buy that property. And same thing goes for the equity as well. Can be used for your personal work or finance, which I will be talking in the personal future slide. Do remember, guys, that the equity is completely tax free. The moment you take the equity out, that cash actually comes to you as a form of cash, liquid cash. I would say that liquid cash directly come to your bank account, so that you can actually access that cash and can use it for any purposes. So that cash which comes to your account is completely tax free. It will not be taxed. That is called equity, and that are the advantages that you will have if you are trying to pull out the equity. Now let's understand what are the factors that you can help yourself build your equity further. So say for example, you had some equity and you pulled out the equity. Now you can come back and say, hey, what will happen if I pull out the equity? Will my house be remaining on the same level of capital that I had a few years back? Or will it grow after that also, and I can pull out some more equity? So the answer to it is yes, it will grow, but depending on situation to situation, which we will talk in a while. If you reduce your current debt on that property where you took out the equity, then definitely that will increase your equity. That will increase the power of taking the equity out again in the future. So by doing some kind of additional payments, which I personally do, I always used to ensure that I used to add between 500 to 1000 Australian dollars more than what my EMI is. That actually helps me reduce my debt and improve my capital growth, and also can accumulate some equity in the future. Pay more down payment. So say for example, you are going to buy a house and you think that why should I be paying only 20%? If you have some cash and if you can spare it, go ahead and put that amount more than what it has been asking for. So whenever there is a 20% deposit, you don't have to pay the 20% deposit. You can definitely pay more than 20% deposit in order to reduce the debt, and it will immediately will factor your equity into it. Renovations. So say for example, now you have a house. At one point of time, they have the renovations can be a big factor in increasing your capital. So say for example, like I said, a house of $500,000, you have a $250,000 of equity. You pulled out 80% of it. Now you don't have that much of money. But what you can do here is that using a good debt. So by using that equity amount, you invested that into your own house. By say for example, you added a fireplace, you added some new tiles, you just renovated the whole place by doing some internal paints or renovated the kitchen, renovated the bathrooms. That actually uplifted the value of your house. Now next time when the evaluator comes back and he sees your house, he will feel, all right, what is happening is that last time these are the things that was causing the issues, and now you have got rid of those things. Now because of it, it had increased the value of your house. Some of the tips that I can definitely share with you are like by adding a solar panel, adding an electric vehicle charging station in your garage, adding a small swimming pool if you can, remove any carpets and make it or hardwood flooring or tiles, add some good contrast colors or paints. Kitchens, if you can add some good bench tops, make it more modern look, then definitely that is going to increase the value. Same thing goes with the bathroom as well. When someone says that someone comes and do a re-evaluation and is going to give you an equity, what he means by that is that someone is coming in as a customer to your house and sees, is this house have a potential? If that house goes on market, then how the other customers who will come to buy this house will look into. Say for example, I have a house, and if I have that house in a very bad state and you are willing to buy my property, you come to inspect my property, and once you see the condition of my house and you feel like, nah, I don't think this house even should go beyond 500, you will start charging or you start bargaining with me and say that, hey, you know what, the condition of the house is not that great, I would like to pay you $400,000 or even less than that according to the condition of the house, and that will reduce my capital. So friends, it's very important that you renovate that house if you have some equity, and it will uplift the value of your house. That's where I shared you some tips and tricks. Next one is that annual appreciation. Every year there is an appreciation that happens on the land, not on the house, but on the land, because the house always depreciates, land always appreciates. So the appreciation on your land of between 3 to 7% always happens annually. Again, it depends on location to location, and different factors also, external factors also comes into account. For example, you stayed in a very newly built suburb, and that suburb had nothing at the beginning. But with time, say for example, after 5 years, one small mall came into picture. The moment the mall comes into picture, your house price will also increase. The reason behind, the land value already had increased because many people started coming to that place in order to access the shopping mall. In the next 2 years, you will have a new hospital. If you have a new hospital, again the demand increases, and so it will be your land value. So with each year, the land value always increase, but it can also increase significantly if some of the external factors comes into picture. Let's take an example of an equity. So this will help you understand it more beautifully. You bought a house back in 2020 for $500,000. You paid a deposit of 20% towards it, so you paid around $100,000 to service the loan. Now above deposit, reduce the loan or debt to 400,000 Australian dollars to pay back to bank. Like I said guys, bank will never pay you the 100% of the house. So you need to pay something from your end in order for the bank to finance it. So the more deposit you pay, the better it is for you in the future. Now it's August 2023. So you bought the house back in 2020 and you hold on to it for 3 years. Now it's August 2023. You asked your bank to come and do a re-evaluation of the house. So like I said, when the bank comes and do a re-evaluation, they see a lot of factors. What you have in the house, what kind of things that will definitely attract a lot of customers. Does your house is in a very good location where they can find a lot of good shop malls or hospitals or stations or public transport, a lot of factors externally, apart from the condition of your house as well. So the bank comes and did a re-evaluation, and at that point of time, they came at around 750,000 Australian dollars, which is not bad at all. They came and they checked and they told that, all right, your house currently after 3 years will sit at 750,000 Australian dollars. You have reduced the debt by 20,000 in 3 years as well. So basically it took you 3 years to reach 750,000 Australian dollars, but also in that 3 years, you have tried your best to reduce the debt by $20,000, which you already had done it in the last 3 years by paying an extra into your down payment. Into your EMI, not into your down payment. Apologies. Now you sit on an equity of 750,000 Australian dollars minus the $400,000 minus the $20,000, that will be around 370 Australian dollars. So currently you are on an equity or the excess amount of 370,000 Australian dollars. Bank keeps a buffer of 20% of it, and so you can now finance an amount of 296 Australian dollars. Like I said guys, bank keeps a buffer of 20% of it, which I already had mentioned. They will never finance 100%, they will always keep a buffer, and they kept a buffer of 20%, and the rest of the amount they can pay you. So the 80% of the 370,000 Australian dollars will be around 296,000 Australian dollars that you can use to pull out the equity out of it. So this is a small example on how to understand how the equity is actually calculated and how you can use this amount to build your next empire of property or real estate. So let's go through it. Post the re-evaluation, you understood that the bank is saying that you are very good with your equity. You have around 296,000 Australian dollars sitting with you that you can access it from the bank. So bank is happy to do that. But now how you can apply it? There are two ways. It is very similar to how you apply for your home loan. So you have to go through the whole process again. But for that reason, you can take help from financial broker who will do all this hard work for you, and you don't have to worry. You just need to go read the terms and conditions, read the contract, and just sign it where it is appropriate if you are happy with it. Once you do that, the financial broker will talk to the bank and he or she will get you the best deal out of it. Sometimes you can also go personally and talk to the banks itself. It's not like that you cannot do, which I did initially for my first home. But it's always better if you go through the financial broker, because they have some good connections in the banks, because of whom they can give you a very good discount on the interest rates. So say for example, if the interest rate currently is on 5.8 or 6%, they can give you a minimum of to 4 to 5% of interest rate by giving a discount of 1.8 to 2% on the interest rate that is currently being charged by the bank. So I would suggest you can directly go with the bank. No issues with that, but I will highly recommend, if you can go through the financial broker, do that. Now the next and most important question, or the most interesting question I would say, is that what can I buy with that equity? Okay, fair enough, you want to make me understood that what is equity and how the equity works and what is good debt and bad debt. But now what exactly can I do with the equity? Can I use it for anything that I love to do, or I have to use it for a certain thing only? I'm not sure about other countries, but in Australia at least, equity comes like a liquid cash for you. So when you apply for the equity and you go to the bank and say that, hey, you know what, I have an equity of this much of amount, I would like to take it out. Bank gives you the cash. It will put that amount in your bank account so that you can actually access it and you can use it for anything. Now that is where your plan, your strategy comes into picture, and you need to take decisions accordingly to whether convert it into a bad debt or into a good debt. Because even though you have the cash, that's a debt that goes towards the bank, and you need to repay that amount as well, because even though it is your money, it has been paid by the bank. So you have to pay back to bank in order to access that amount. So please be careful on what you decide on how you proceed further to use that equity. Now, you can use it for buying new houses to stay or for investment. So say for example, you had been buying houses for investments for a very long time. You had bought 3 or 4 houses. Now you have built up a very good equity. Now you think that, all right, it's time that I want to settle down and I would like to buy my dream house. Using those equity, you can actually build your own dream house, or it's the vice versa. So say for example, I am staying in my own house. I had been staying in this house for the last 2 years, and I feel like there is a lot of amount which is currently staying in my equity that I can access, and with that money I can actually build another investment house that I can rent it on. So that you can also do. You can buy the cars and any personal liability that you would like to have. Say for example, boat, iPhone, anything that you think, okay, fair enough, I can have that cash, then I can buy all those stuffs. Then yes, you can. You can buy it for any specific thing or commodity or product that you always wished for. But do remember, that comes under your bad debt. The first point goes into your good debt. Kids tuitions or school fees, many people do that as well. Now I cannot term it as bad debt or good debt because that all depends on the financial situation of the person, right? So say for example, some family members, some parents, they do take out some cash from their equity in order to finance or in order to pay the school fees or tuition fees or the college fees of their kids so that they can continue their education. So that I will not be able to term it as good debt or bad debt, because at one point it is like investing on your next generations to study well, to grow well, and to become something that they always had vision for. So like I said, I leave it with you, and if you can please put me on comment section what you think about good debt and bad debt, and if you can please help me to understand if you are still struggling a bit on the good debt or bad debt, that we can definitely talk and we can sort it out as well if we need to. Let's go to the next one, and that is called emergency funds for future. Some people also do use that equity to pull out. Like I said, this equity is nothing, it's a liquid cash that you will find in your bank account, right? So basically many people love to put it in their bank account, and that amount will stay there for rainy days. Like say for example, something happens there and they lose their job or and they are now been handicapped and they cannot work for a couple of months or for a couple of days or for a couple of years. Then they use that cash as an emergency fund to move ahead with in the future. So people uses it for different reasons, for different specs, but it all depends on scenario to scenario and situation to situation. Now the main question: how can I build an empire of multi-million dollars using equity? And it's very simple. Let me explain you. Let's take this as an example. Again, if you see this, you are using good debt, and using the good debt you are actually building your empire. Using the good debt you can build up your property portfolio, and with the time the capital will always grow and the debt will reduce by the rental we get out of those properties without affecting your serviceability. Let's take it as an example. Now consider this first property. Now let's take as an two kind of roadmap. So one roadmap, you are a full-time investor, you don't stay in your own house, you are still renting, which is fine, but you are not going to stay in your own house for a very long time. You had planned that you are going to rent out a house for yourself, and rest you are just going to keep on buying houses for investment purpose. So first property that you bought is of $600,000 and you rented it out to a person. When you rented it out, your EMI now will be fulfilled by the rental you will get from that house. So that is quite good. And everyone says that if the rental can at least fulfill 80% of your EMI, then you are in a very good condition and your house is really good in the investment area. So now, say for example, you bought the property one is currently sitting with an investor and the rental is going good as well. It might be positive gearing, might be negative gearing. Now positive gearing and negative gearing are two other terms that we will discuss in a different video. And if you really want to understand this negative and positive gearing, please do let me know in the comment section, and I will be happy to gather lot of information on top of it and share it with you. So you got a property, $600,000, you have put it on rent. After a year, bank comes and do a reevaluation and he says you have an excess of $100,000 sitting as an equity for you. So what it does is that it will tell you out of that $100,000 you can access 80% of which will be $80,000. So that investor, he took out that 80% of it, which is $80,000, and uses that as a deposit to buy its second property. Now the second property, which is $500,000, and by the time he might be having some savings as well. So $500,000, the 20% of it will be around $100,000. So he already had $80,000, so he don't have to worry about waiting for the next 3 or 4 years to save that $80,000. He can just put out the equity out of the property one as $80,000. He had saved some amount, that is, say for example $30,000 in a year. He added that together, it is now $110,000. So he paid it on top of that loan of property 2 and financed it for the full house for $500,000. Now he have a $500,000 where he only put in $30,000 on top of it, and rest amount is all financed. Even though it is financed, but it's a good debt. The reason behind, the second property can go into rental and it can also give him good outcomes out of it. And he doesn't have to pay any EMI because the rental can automatically service the EMI of the house. Now after a year or a few months, again he did a reevaluation and he found out that the property 2 is now sitting on $100,000 equity. Again, if he is buying it in a very good suburb. Now the bank comes in and he sees that alright, this guy is not paying a lot of money towards servicing this house. The reason behind, the rental is taking care of it automatically, so the serviceability is not impacted that much. Neither are the credit score as well, because he is paying the EMIs on time without any fail. Now the second property, he got 80, something around again $100,000, and the bank pays him $80,000. Using that $80,000, now he got back to property 3 and bought another property 3 by paying that amount of 80,000 as the advance token. The moment he got there, he got another house which he again can put it on rent, or he plans to stay this time. It depends on his own situation. But say for example, he is now again going to put it on rental. The moment he put it on rental, this house also will get automatically serviced by the rentals that comes out of it, so that he don't have to pay anything to the bank. The rental will take care of it. But what he's doing is that he's sitting on 3 properties worth millions now. Worth millions. Try to understand this, friends. Worth millions. Now he purchased the first one for 600,000, which 1 year later became 700,000. Then he bought 500,000, which 6 months later became 600,000. So total he is now on 6 plus 7, around like 1.3 million. So he is currently on 1.3 million if he only have property 1 and 2. But he uses the equity, and with a good debt he went and purchased the property number 3. With the property number 3, which he purchased for $450,000, he is now renting it out, and he is also not paying any EMI because the rental is taking care of it. Now after 6 months or after a year, he figured out that okay, he had got another property that he can buy because there is already an excess of 100,000 again in the property 3. He can access that liquid cash or that equity out of this property 3 and can put it as an advance to buy the property number 4. The moment he does that, now at the end, within 2 years, if you see 2 to 3 years, where most of the people can do that, and yes guys, many people actually had done that. But there are ways to do it. There are other strategies how you can do it, and I will talk about it in the latter part, like in some other videos, not in this video. So people can do that and can build their portfolio, and this is like a cyclic situation where go through one cycle. So one cycle you have already created a goal that within 1 or 2 years or 3 years I am going to buy 4 properties. You bought your 4 properties in 4 years or 3 years, and then another cycle comes. For the next 3 years, you're going to buy another 4 properties. Many people does that, and with that also what they do is that not only accumulate the capital growth, but sometimes they also do sell some of the properties from where they get a lot of money out of it, which they can use it for their own personal. So basically, they don't finance anything on their own personal stuff. Rather, these kind of good debts which is paid to buy some new properties which will work by itself to capitalize your money, and now that money will give you the leverage to do something of your own stuff. For example, you want to take a holiday, you can take a holiday because you have so much of amount floating around that you can take some money out of it, and you don't have to worry because those amounts are all self-serviced by the rental. So you're not paying anything extra. So you can either save for that, or you can just pull out that money and take a holiday and go out with your family or friends. So this is how you are going to fulfill your personal desires, but using your good debt rather than using the bad debt. So always remember guys, banks always win. No matter what, banks always win. But we are not here to compete with the bank. We are here to compete with each other. When I say each other, not with you and me, but with ourselves and with our own demons that is inside us, to ensure that we don't let that demon come out. And with that, what we do is that we leverage our goodness in order to make everyone happy and to help everyone grow with us. So please guys and friends, do not use bad debt, and take bad decisions in your life, because we never know when the situation can just change overnight. So be ready for anything that happens. Be good to yourself and be good to everyone around you as well. Now, that is how you build the $2.1 million property in a few years using equity, that is liquid cash. So let's do some calculations, and these are the same calculations which we had already discussed about in the past. Please go through it by pausing this screen and you will know how the equity actually works. Let me know in the comment section if you wish to know something specific in the finance world and something in specific to investment world. Let me know also how you feel about this video, and please do share your feedback on the comment section. We will talk about it later on. That's it for the video. Let's meet next time. Until we meet next time, thank you and goodbye.